Hi, folks. This is Erik Core with Punk Globe, and I'm here with Johnny Hickman from The Unforgiven, from Cracker, and probably half a dozen other projects. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, quite a few. Lately, it's more just me, Johnny Hickman solo, more than anything else. Uh, I'm doing all right on that front. I'm happy to say. So, yeah.
Cool. I have to say, I took a deep dive into your solo stuff, and the Tilting album is my favorite.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, and I think some of the stuff I enjoyed the most about it was it's some artists like I start the album and it's going to be the same thing through the whole thing. And you weren't easy on me like that. Like, and I like that. Like as a listener, it's like I like that you mixed it up. There were different styles happening and kind of took me on a journey. So,
I take that as a high compliment. David Lowery and I, we started Cracker in 1991, although we'd known each other a long time before that. But one of the specifics we agreed on, and when we started the band, is that we weren't going to edit out any of our influences, be they punk, country, psychedelic, a lot of Brit rock, all the things that we loved as teenagers and as kids growing up. Um, we decided not to edit any of those things out, even though that's more confusing for the record company because they don't really know how to market you that way. And Virgin Records, the London branch said, "Well, what are you? Are you country? Are you punk? How do we market you?" And I said, "Well," and David and I just sort of stayed united and said, "Well, it's just cracker music. We're cracker. So you figure it out." Uh, the bands that we really liked growing up, at the top of that list would probably be the Kinks, as David and I say. We never wanted to be the Beatles or the Rolling Stones. We wanted to be the Kinks, a
nice.
slightly weirder band who spoke their mind and also, uh, you know, very non-genre specific. And so we've stayed true to that, and I try to hold that through in my solo records too. So thank you for. I take that as a high compliment.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed that. I could hear the Kinks influence in there.
Big
Uh,
time.
One for the Road is probably one of my favorite albums of all times.
Uh, Preservation. Yeah, Muswell Hillbillies was when David and I, after being friends for 10 years, we started like, okay, let's bring out your favorite records. And of course, at that time, it was the Clash, it was the Sex Pistols, it was the Buzzcocks were huge for David and I. That was our favorite punk band was the Buzzcocks, and we sort of bonded on that. And then on far as old school went, we bonded on the Kinks, because he heard me at a party doing Father Christmas, you
Oh,
know,
nice.
which is just a great song, it's a very, very funny Dave Davies song, but it's also touches on the socioeconomic points too. It's a little bit political. So that's who we are. And we've kind of maintained that weirdness, as Larry and I like to say, too weird for the mainstream. But
Oh,
uh, it's in the long run, I think it served us better to be sort of a cult band than a big mainstream band that blows up and sells 12 million records. And then where do you go from there? You know?
yeah, no,
So,
I love it because you really do keep your options open in your
yes,
songwriting. And I could hear the homage to like I could hear a little Beatles nod to them.
sure,
Definitely like a nod to a little nod to bluegrass, a little nod to country. And of course the rock and roll is always there too.
sure. Yeah.
So and I really like your lyrics a lot. I was going through and it was funny because before you came on, a couple songs were earworming in my brain. I'm like, I've got to get these
Oh,
out
good.
before he gets on here because it's driving me crazy. But yeah, one of the ones I really love is when in Destiny Misspent when you do the bug zapping hours before morning, good citizen still in bed. It's just I like your use of visuals are really great.
Thank you. Yeah. I try to create a scene. Yeah, that song, it's interesting. It almost didn't go on tilting because my ex-wife at the time and my producer, who was a young buck, great young producer, they said, "Well, it's kind of a long song." And I said, "It's as long as it needs to be." That song is very much just sort of a page out of my diary, my journal, and each verse sort of tells its own little story. So thank you for that. Yeah, and it addresses things like in the, I think it's the fourth verse where I say, Mr. Linkus decided he should go. David and I were good, very good friends with Mark Linkus from Sparkle Horse.
Mm.
And very tragically, Mark took his own life. Um, and I sort of just put that in there because it was what I was thinking and journaling that day. And so that was a touchy spot with some of the fans. And like, wow, you're talking about Mark and his death. And I said, well, sure, I don't get too graphic, but Mark figured huge in my life, and he was a good friend. We used to paint houses together before either one of us, were somewhat famous. So yeah. That thank you. That song means a lot to me, and I'm glad that I fought for it to keep it on the record um, to this day. I mean, when I do it live, I can tell the hardcore fans because they go nuts. When I go into Destiny Misspent or one of these more very very personal songs, I'll put it that way.
Yeah, no, there's a real intimacy to some of these songs where it's like I felt like you were kind of opening little doors to your life.
Absolutely.
And I always appreciate that as a listener because there's artists where it's like you feel like they're purposely keeping you away from anything.
Right, right.
And I felt like you just kind of just like, here, I'm gonna share this part of me with you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think that it's essential if you're going to call yourself a true artist, whether you're a poet or a painter or a novelist, musician, songwriter, if you're not putting a little opening one of your veins and putting some of your true self out there, then you're really just sort of wasting time. You're just sort of playing at being, well, especially in music, you're playing at being a songwriter. Uh, you know, if you rely too heavily on your influences, let's say, as opposed to just opening up a vein and saying, "Well, here's this horrible thing about me." You just be honest, be
Yeah.
completely honest. Um, I've got a song on the last album I did. It's called Blood Moon, called Misanthrope's Blues, and all these kind of songs are semi-autobiographical. The Misanthrope's Blues is a song where I really put on the jacket of an asshole. I mean, the guy, uh, the song, the speaker in the song really is kind of a jerk, and he's sort of admitting that he's a jerk. And I wrote it about someone else, but there are little threads of me in there too. Look out, baby, your daddy's got the misanthrope blues. He's crawling out the window. Best thing ever happened to you. He's a jerk. The guy's very much a jerk. Uh, but anytime, and I notice with the way David writes too. With Cracker, I come up with more the melodies and things, and David is the first and foremost lyricist. But we write a lot of songs together, and we've both written songs and handed it to the other guy. I
Oh,
wrote a song called Mr. Wrong for the first album. And as I was writing the song, it was before Cracker was formed, but I was thinking, who would really think this song was funny is Lowry, because we'd already been friends a long time and I was good friends with all the guys in Camper Van Beethoven. It was one of the first songs I showed to him that I'd written up in Bakersfield that I was sort of doing the country thing. And he flipped out. He said, I really like this song. Can I sing it? I went, absolutely. So yeah, I wrote every word and note of Mr. Wrong, but he sings it on the record and it's a good fit for him. And on our last record, Berkeley to Bakersfield, he wrote a song called California Country Boy. And I said, this is sensational. It's kind of about where we're from and the whole thing. And he said, yeah, I think it's a Johnny song. So he sort of returned the favor 10 records later. I think you should sing it. And sometimes it slightly confounds but amuses the fans is that we will do that. We'll write a song and decide, oh, well, here, this should be a David song, and I'll give it to him to sing. Or he'll write a song and say, this is a Johnny song, and he'll toss it off to me. And I didn't know it for a long time, but then I started thinking about it, about how the Beatles would do this. John would have a song and go, it might be more of a Paul
hmm.
vocal. They would do that, and they would especially do it with Ringo, Yellow Submarine, and they both wrote it and went, yeah, this is a Ringo song. Then they would toss it to him, Octopus's Garden. Is this a Ringo? This is a Ringo. And they'd give it to Ringo to sing. And I just thought that's a pretty great place to come to as co-songwriters and as a songwriter to where it's still personal, but you're handed off to one of your bandmates. Just why? I don't know. It just feels like a better fit. So yeah, yeah. Um, uh, Eric, I'm glad that you got tilting. Um, it's funny, my first solo record, Palmhenge, I was working on that while David was kind of reuniting with Camper Van Beethoven, and they were working on a record, great record, New Roman Times, that they were working on. And this is around the year 2000. And I thought, well, what am I going to do? Well, he's back working with Camper for a break here. And we knew we were going to stay together. Cracker's just an entity of Hickman Lowry. And I said, so I started writing songs that I was thinking maybe Cracker songs. So I just decided to put out a solo record called Palmhenge, my first one. And I was kind of terrified. I didn't have a record company. I ran it by a few record companies and they didn't know what to make of it because it's like tilting. It's sort of all over
Totally. Yeah, I like that
sort of
one too.
what kind of over
Yeah,
the map stylistically. So I had just decided to put it out myself, and I don't even know how he got a hold of it. But Robert Christgau, in your business, this is the guy is referred to as the dean of music critics. You know, he's like the Mac Daddy, Robert Christgau,
Mhm.
Christgau's record guys. I don't even know how he got it, but he got my first solo record, and he gave it a B+ review, and he gave it Voice's Choice in the Village Voice, which
Wow.
was sensational. And friends were asking, how did you get that guy's attention? He gave it a better review than he'd given any Cracker or Camper Van Beethoven records. I'm like, well, that's pretty cool. Nice feather in my cap. But I don't even know how he got it, but I'll take it, you know. And he stood by it. He goes, yeah, I just really like this guy's record. So there you go. Solo career launched without a record company, without a publicist, without anything. I just all, DIY,
I love the way it came together for you, and it's well deserved. I mean, another line that I kept getting stuck on was half century face.
Oh yeah.
It's fucking brilliant.
Oh, thank you.
That
Thank you. Yeah, that just sort of struck me that, I sort of, people's faces change, obviously, as we age. Um, and I think that your personality comes out in your features at some point. If you're one of these perpetually angry people, it's going to show on your face as you post. Look at a Willie Nelson, for example. Um, he's got those laugh lines that are just so deep, and it just sort of shows a face that's been pretty positive for most of its existence on planet Earth, So I threw that line in there. Uh, half a tank, keep your eye on that reserve. Half a century, you get the face that you deserve. It's a little mean-spirited, but maybe not. I don't know.
it's real though. I mean,
It is real.
it's like
If you like it or not, right?
yeah. I mean, I'm old enough to, watching those things and people I know, and it's like, I think the people that age the best are actually the musicians. I really do. I think there's a joy to what we do that just keeps us younger.
I tend to agree. Um, it playing music, especially for a living, which I've done for upwards of 40 years now, um, it simultaneously ages you and keeps you young somehow. It's an odd reality. But I mean, on all levels, it's probably good for our synapses to keep us sharp and communicating and, you know, not succumb to, those uh, symptoms of age. Um, so yeah, I think it's a good vitamin, that music, picking up a
Yeah.
guitar or bass or whatever it is you play or sing or write songs or so forth. It's good for the body and mind.
I'm curious about Berkeley to Bakersfield. So I think one of you guys might have been living in the East Bay at the same time I was. Because like the descriptions are so poignant. Because I'm like, oh yeah, it's like you're talking about a day I might have had. And I just recently went to Bakersfield for the first time, and it kind of blew my mind because it's so different than Berkeley. Like we
Absolutely.
were driving in, and suddenly we realized we were in the center of Bakersfield,
Uh,
but didn't realize that we'd actually hit Bakersfield really.
yeah,
It's such a bizarre landscape
it
and
is.
just totally different experience.
I agree. Yeah, that the title of that record and the way we sort of started lining up the songs, it's funny because we've sort of just sorted out between, it's a double record. We've got the Bakersfield songs, a little leaning more toward country and Americana, and the the Berkeley songs, more the rockers and sort of the punk rock thing. But once again, one of the strongest country songs on the record David wrote. But originally I was living in the Bakersfield area, and another one of the songs called "Beautiful," I had written this melody that's very much like the Clash. It's kind of punk pop. That's more of the Berkeley side of the record, but I wrote that one. So once again, we're mishmashing it all together, and yeah, it the title and the way we put that record together really spoke to our origins. Because when we first started talking about forming a band together after being friends all these years, I was living in Lake Isabella up in the mountains above Bakersfield, and David was up in the Bay Area where he'd been for a long time.
Mhm.
We knew each other from Redlands as kids and our little punk rock bands opening for each other and so forth. And then he went to Santa Cruz to go to college, and I was sad. Like I was just really getting to know that guy. And but we stayed in touch. And when he tracked me down, it was sort of at the demise of Camperman Beethoven. They'd broken up in the middle of a tour, and he just sort of randomly, this was pre-internet and pre-cell phone, to date
Mhm.
myself. And he tracked me down through friends and found out that I was sort of playing in country bands up in Bakersfield. And he said, "Is it serious? What do you got going there?" I said, "No, I'm playing Mando with one bunch, playing drums in another band, playing guitar, writing songs." And he just sort of said, "Well, yeah, you want to get together?" So we did. And in that first week we were together, I brought in the Cracker song, Mr. Wrong. I brought in the music, which became I See the Light, another big Cracker song. Uh, This is Cracker Soul, which David wrote the words to. I just had the riffs, and we just boom, we just hit it off. Within a week or two, we had a pretty good chunk of music, and it was sort of like a couple of weeks in, it was like, this could work. And then to throw another wrench in our realities, we moved to Richmond, Virginia, and started the band there because it was a cheap college town, and we knew we could live for next to nothing. And at this point, Virgin Records was really interested in what David was going to do post Camperman Beethoven. And David really went to bat for me, and he told them, "Oh, you like that song? Well, Johnny wrote that one. You like this one? We wrote that one together." So after a bit, the label said, "Well, maybe we got to get this Johnny guy in here and talk to him." And they ended up signing me to the label, and we started a whole new record deal. So, right place, right time for me, from crappy living on my sister's couch up in Lake Isabella writing songs that later became Cracker songs. I mean, I was completely broke at the time, working little construction jobs, painting houses, whatever I could do to get by. And 1 year from that point, our song Teen Angst was on the radio, and it was ended up number one on college radio, alternative radio, that format. 1 year after we sat down on a couch at his mom's house in Redlands and said, "Well, let's write some songs." So, boy, we could actually go to the ATM and $20 would come out. We could eat.
That's a great origin story, and I really I like kind of just some of your background too. Like there's a grit to the music, and I hear it as we talk now. Like some of the stuff you went through, because I think sometimes people haven't lived enough. It's hard to write,
Yeah, there is that.
and it sounds like that living is what actually brings some of that soul to you.
It informs the songs lyrically, absolutely. And yeah, David and I have that in common. We're both military kids, so moved every 2 years, and we lived all over the place growing up. I think it's where a lot of the Southern strains came from because I grew up on Air Force bases in Little Rock, Arkansas, and in Florida and in Texas. And by the time that he and I got together as friends in California, we sort of had that background. We met because both our dads were stationed at the same air base in California. And yeah, I mean, you're always, when you live that life I've found out over the years that a lot of my fellow musicians and songwriters have started from being military families. And it's sort of, yeah, it does inform your lyrics. You're always the new kid. You're always having to make friends, regardless of whether you're shy or outgoing or what have you. You're just sort of forced to break those boundaries and make connections with. And I think it toughens you up really early, Eric. It does just, wow, here I am. I don't know one human being in this fourth, fifth grade class. So I guess I better say hello. Uh, I'm going to just end up hiding in the corner for the whole school year, you know?
It seems like it really do a lot to also enhance your skills of observation
Oh, most certainly.
because you learn to read people, and that's just, I mean, that's a huge part of songwriting.
Absolutely. Yeah. Big fan of Patti Smith. And I'm now devouring the third Patti Smith book. And I just noticed her very, very keen sense of observation, which she immediately puts through her poetic mind and mill. And her new book, Bread of Angels, is just sensational. It's basically a journal of her life and her moving and going to new places and making these connections, which she did with Fred Sonic Smith, her husband, who passed, and then she was raising their kids on her own. And she's just a remarkable poet. And it's almost as if these very strong poet glasses that she was born with and sees the world through this prism. She almost can't write without that poetic side coming in. And you can sense in her book that she's leaning toward really like, sort of mapping out her path and her history. And it immediately goes into this magnificent poetry prism. And I just really admire writers like that. Well, I'm a big fan of Bob Dylan, who is friends with Patty. And I see, and like, so for instance, Joni Mitchell, people who just see the world through these poet's glasses, if you will. And you almost can't turn that off. And if you were able to turn it off, you wouldn't be the artist that you are. I know I'm getting really esoteric and psychedelic here, but it's kind of
No, I
true.
dig it. I get where you're coming. I was just thinking of autobiographies. I actually just picked up Patti Smith's with her relationship with Mapplethorpe.
Just kids, yeah.
Yeah. I just started reading that, and but my favorite one I've read lately was Peter Wolf from the Jay Giles Band.
Ooh, I'll have to get that one.
Oh my God, it's he is such a good storyteller.
Wow.
And he's a trip because he ran into everybody. Like there's even a point where he's having like coffee or tea with Alfred Hitchcock. I
Wow.
mean, his stories are just wild. But yeah, if you want a fun read, that would be one I would definitely put on the list.
Yeah, the Jay Giles band were when I was a kid in San Bernardino, first going to concerts when I was sneaking off when I was 12, 13 years old. It seemed like the Jay Giles band were just the eternal opening band for like all these gigantic bands. And I remember thinking as a kid, well, why aren't they a huge hit? Because they're really great. Of course, later they did, hit their real stride. But I remember thinking, boy, these guys are great. Which one's Jay Giles? I had no idea, but they were always great, and he was a really compelling front man. I thought he was sensational. Yeah. Oh, there's another good book to read. I've always got at least two, if not three books going at once, which is how I stay sane on the road,
Yeah.
rock band and traveling as much as I do. Um, and I've got the Kindle, I get books
Oh
on
yeah.
Kindle, which is handy because I can read it in the van at night because it lights up. But I like having the paper in my hand. I like having the book. I'm back to that now, going total old school with the books.
I remember more when I have the papers. Like
Yeah.
there's something about the physical. It's even like it's one thing that frustrates me about listening to music these days is like so much of it's in a digital format. And I like to see where things were recorded. I want to see who was playing on the album. I want to see who the engineer was. Like all that stuff matters. And like as a kid, I would read all that stuff and all these threads would start to emerge.
Sure. It's all crucial. I
You
agree.
know?
I feel the same way about digital Music, yeah, it's a very similar situation. Yeah, in my books that I read the whole way through, I'm highlighting and making little notes on the side, and I'll circle a sentence and put a little smile by it, or a star, or a cross, or a something that when I go back and reread the book sometime later, and boom, and I'll see that. Or after I'm gone, somebody will get this book at a thrift store and go, "What's all this? Huh? Oh, it was owned by this Johnny guy. What's that about?" I can't help but do it when
Yeah.
passage, very much so with Patty's books, who I think she's just a sensational poet and writer. And that's the most marked up book I've got so far. It's just unbelievable. Um, uh, Bob Dylan's book, we're still waiting for him to make the next Chronicles. He promised to do several version chapters of this book, but he's only done one. Maybe
Yeah.
he just sort of went, I'll get to it when I'm 110 or something. Who knows? But yeah. Um, I think that's one of the things that's a little bit lost in the way music is sold and presented now, uh, because of the form. My eldest son is really becoming a star in sort of the EDM electronica world, um, and he thinks in terms. I think he's just old enough. He's in his mid 30s, and he just thinks just enough in terms of an album as the work of
Mm.
art and all the songs. And he's been, he and I had a have an off again, on again relationship. I was gone so much of his childhood, but now we're really bonding now that he's an artist and really coming into his own as an electronic artist. He goes by Citizen Star Crusher. Yeah, I'm going to give him a little plug here
Oh,
because
please, yeah.
he's my son, but I honestly could tell you, Eric, that if he wasn't my son and I just stumbled upon Citizen Star Crusher's music, I would have been floored because he's really, really good. And I'm so proud of him. I almost don't want to mention my name because I don't want people distracted from his art.
Mhm.
But lately, he's been picking my brain about sequencing. I said, "Wow, you really do think of it as your work is in albums." His first album got great reviews, and it's just sort of this secret, like hip, hidden treasure that only certain people have found out. But Citizen Star Crusher, yeah, I said, so you're thinking in terms of the entire album as the story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And he said, well, I was raised, you're my dad. So, I look at it from your perspective and, the Cracker records, when I listen to them, it sort of feels like you and David are presenting it that way. I said, well, yeah, absolutely. We grew up with albums. So, yeah, to us, it's a bigger picture. It's almost, I compare it to, if you can take a little snippet out of the center of a great movie and it may move you in a certain way, but it's not going to move you the way the entire film is going to move you, or an entire book. You can grab a quote and toss it out there to sell the book, what have you. But yeah, it's a bigger picture. Um, and it saddens me, Eric, that my youngest son's generation, oh, he's doing fine on his own too. My youngest son just turned 23 and he plays drums, bass, guitar, keys. He sings. He's already up and running. He's just about to start the number one luthier school.
Oh,
He's making guitars and basses now. Both sons are doing great, but my younger son's generation, they don't really think in terms of so much as albums, and they don't read very much, and that really saddens me, um, as I read voraciously. But it's his generation, and you kind of can't blame them. It's what they've been
yeah.
fed. It's the age of the quick cuts and the edited videos and snippets of songs. I mean, I know people that age and younger who will only snip certain parts of songs that they like and put them all together. They're even
Oh,
going so far as to take the chorus and put it in their playlist as opposed to the whole fucking song. It's
wow.
like, are you kidding me? What's next? You're just going to put the capitalized letters or the punctuation? Where does it end? Says the old guy. You old man yelling at clouds.
It's kind of cool in a way because it's like, I mean, so much of art is that pulling from other people, but yeah, it's kind of a trip. But I'm like you, I love albums because I think in albums. Like I see pieces of work together and it just makes more sense.
what are some of your favorite albums? Just off the cuff.
Oh wow, that's a big question to ask. I might One for the Road I mentioned before. I love that one.
Which one? I'm sorry.
One for the Road, the Kinks.
Oh, fantastic! Right.
Um, I would say Fear the Record by Fear.
Oh, very good.
I mean, I think one of the best punk albums ever made. You know, Circle Jerks, Golden Shower of Hits.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Just but I mean, and I could go into like, I mean, there's half a dozen Johnny Cash albums.
Sure.
I gotta say, Tilting has hit the list. I'm really like, I just
I'm
started diving into that, and it's like, it's kind of driving me crazy because I can't stop going through it.
oh good.
So which is a good thing, but I'm like, okay, I like when an album can grab me like that, and I just want to go deeper and deeper and deeper into it. But yeah, I might like the stuff that I listen to is it's a huge mix of things, and um, so a lot of my influences. I was born in '68, and so it's like I grew up with all the classic rock bands.
Sure.
And then I remember you guys as a college radio like that hitting at that point, and I grew up in a small town in the Midwest, so I'd stay up until like 3 in the morning to hear the college radio show.
Cool.
Like from 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. I'd be with my transistor, like, oh, this could be great, and
Yeah, I did the same thing as a kid, just waiting for that song to come back on. I mean, kids today, they have no idea, but that's how uh, dedicated we were to listening to the
yeah,
songs, of finding the songs we wanted to hear. And then it's like, wow, do I have enough money to go buy the album? Whew, I guess so. And for every album I bought, I don't know about you, Eric, but for every album I bought when I was 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, there were five others I wish I could have
oh
put
yeah,
my my paper route money, you know.
yeah, I the same thing. Yeah, it was.
Uh,
There was a little record store by where I live where somebody must have been buying punk albums, recording them, and then dumping them into the used bins. So I
yeah,
remember getting, I don't know if you remember the band The Lude.
I don't know, Lude.
Oh, The Lude was amazing. They had this album American Wino.
Yeah,
It was just incredible. That was the one. Toxic Reasons. But I remember my first Damned album was in there.
yeah,
And I just go through there. I look at the covers and go, this looks cool. I'll take that, like $3.
yeah. You're a real punk rock guy, man.
Oh,
Yeah.
that was my bread and butter growing up. So,
Yeah, I was fortunate when I became friends with Lowry, way, way, way before we formed a band. When he was a teenager, his mom was English. She's from Margate, England, and rest in peace, Margaret. She was a wonderful lady. But he would go for the summers and work for his granddad in construction over in England, and so he got a hold of the really cool early punk records before anybody else.
um,
Punk, other things too. I think he was one of the first people to tell me about Adam and the Ants, and
yes, yes.
definitely the first one to tell me about the Sex Pistols and the Clash, Give Him Enough Rope. He was the guy that was coming back with these great records. Like, and he'd come over to the house and he'd have three or four of them. When I'd throw a party, they called me Papa Punk because I was kind of the oldest of the bunch, and I was in my early 20s, but they were all teenagers. So Papa would have these parties at his apartment, and Lowry and some of the other guys would bring by whatever really cool punk records they have. That's how I learned about the Buzzcocks was through Lowry. Like, who is this? And I remember sitting down with him saying, okay, they're as punk as any of the other punk bands, but they have great melodies. Pete Shelley was like, he just wrote
Oh
beautiful,
yeah,
cool, earworm, hooky
yeah.
melodies, which, no slight to the Clash or the Sex Pistols. We thought, okay, this guy writes bit cooler pop songs. He's got a better sense of melody. So we went down. Buzzcocks became kind of our favorite. That was sort of a bonding thing with Larry and I. And yeah, so yeah, early the first punk rock records. Well, I going back to pre-punk MC5 and bands that sort of were the forerunners of punk. Iggy Pop, I was a big fan of Iggy Pop and the Stooges, and then as things happened, it was called punk and it was called new wave and all these things start just exploded around 78, 79, 80. And yeah, I sort of turned my back on all my prog rock favorites and Zeppelin and all these other bands. Came back to them, of course, in the big
Yes.
pick for a while there. That's all I listened to, you know. was X and all these bands. So
I
and
think a lot of people did that though, because I mean, it was just such a fun period of music. Because like they were just, I felt like every time I'd pick up an album, they'd knock down another wall,
yeah, yeah.
and there'd be just these really creative and I like because it was so much non-traditional stuff.
Mhm.
Where like I mean, like everything from like Gary Floyd's with that bluesy voice in the Dicks,
Yeah.
to like whatever. I mean, just it was a fascinating period of music where people were intentionally trying to create something different.
Yes, indeed. It just exploded and it was just incredible. Yeah, you mentioned Fear earlier, Fear the record. I remember going to see Fear in just a lineup with a bunch of other punk bands. It was like Agent Orange, some bands from out our way out in the Inland Empire, um, the Stepmothers, and just all these bands and great bands. And I remember thinking, in a way, Fear are kind of the perfect punk band because certainly kind of terrifying, certainly political here and there, but also funny,
Yeah,
They were scary and funny at the same time. I thought, well, that's what punk should be. They're kind of terrifying. You see them live and leaving, which is like, there's so many of us, there's so many of us. It was a little bit scary, but he was also funny. New York's all right if you like saxophones. I mean, it was silly, funny music too, and they never lost their sense of humor. I remember going to see them about this time they got signed and leaving was talking about, yeah, all the people in the back, drinking those expensive drinks. Come down here where the real shit's going on, man. I'm like, wow. He got it. He was making fun of the record company people back there, even as they're trying to sign the band,
yeah.
probably. I thought, well, that's the essence of punk right there. Cool.
It's funny. It's like there's such good musicians that I think people don't even realize. Like I was a good buddy I played music with. I was playing the Fear the record because he'd never heard it before. I'm like, how did you live and not hear this album? And about halfway through, he's a drummer. He's like, I think my brain is breaking. He's like, I didn't know punk could be like he said, the songs don't sound complex, but as I listen to what they're doing, I just can't even believe what's happening in this album.
Yeah. Those were some of the best punk bands too. They just, people like bands like Fear and some of the other bands, then I think they just sort of naturally understood, well, okay, what punk's supposed to be three chords and out of tune and loud and screamy. That's the kind of not who we are, but we can still be very, very punk. And I love the way like the Clash grew that way and they started exploring rub-a-dub and reggae and it punk just went wider and wider and
Yeah.
wider. And my favorite punk bands, looking back on it all, were the ones that, like Fear, they weren't, they decided, well, we're not going to follow any formula, you know. We're better, are more complex players than that. So yeah, I mean, there were songs on Fear the record on some other punk bands that like in 6/8 time, and it's just like, and it's really, really tight, uh, you know, um, unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny when you listen to it, it's almost like jazz,
Yeah, yeah,
the complexity of it, but the
yeah.
accessibility of it at the same time is what makes it so punk.
There you go. Yeah, I did one of the first songs. I came in with the first song for a record of ours called "Sunrise in the Land of Milk and Honey," and Larry and I we're talking back and forth, living coast to coast. Part of the reason we're still together, probably. Um, we get together and we work real hard, really fiercely. But it was like, what have you got? I don't know. I got bits and pieces. Well, we'll get in the studio and a lot of these songs will form as they do. But I came in with a finished song called Time Machine for that record. And I didn't even think about it. I just wrote the song and it's about uh, our early days in punk rock and going to see Dead Kennedys. And there was a riot. The whole place was torn apart uh, in Southern Cal. And I wrote about those times. And I wrote it sort of like, Sonny, get into the time machine. I'll show you, I'll take you back to 1982, 83, show you what punk was really like. Okay. You knew punk bands, nothing against you. Get in the time machine. Let's go. And being able to take them back to the DK's riot, you know. And when I was coming out of there with lumps on my head and, bloody rags and bloody noses, because the cops were thumping us with billy clubs, man.
Wow.
We were getting thumped. And the stage was torn apart and the club was torn apart. It was absolute mayhem. And we were lucky to get out of there. I was like David's sister Stephanie was with me and a bunch of our friends of ours. And we were lucky to get out of there with our skin and not be arrested. And we lost a couple of kids. Papa Punk was really upset because some, 13, 14-year-olds, I couldn't find them to gather them all up to take them back to San Bernardino. But it was really a fierce time. So I wrote the song Time Machine. And Larry, I played it for Larry and I said, I defer to you if you want to rewrite the lyrics, whatever. He goes, no, I like what you got. And he changed a couple things, but he said, you didn't realize it's in 6/8 time, right? Wow, I guess it is. It's just sort of, I guess from growing up listening to prog and, some of these bands that it just is in my bloodstream as much as the punk rock stuff. So I wrote a punk song in 6/8 time without even realizing I was doing it till my songwriting partner pointed it out. I'm like, oh, wow, yeah, okay. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Yeah,
I gotta say, every now and then I just need me an injection of Uriah Heep. So I totally get that. It's like,
there you go. I loved Uriah Heep. I like those sort of psychedelic pop bands, sort of. I got this theory, Eric, that a lot of the best music sort of happens at the cusp, between genres. The poor Joe Ely passed yesterday, and I'm really sad. I got to meet Joe and sit in. A friend of mine sent me a picture of me sitting in with Joe Ely in Texas at Green Hall, and Bobby Keys is on sax. I'm like, wow, I'm just so fortunate to have lived through these times, and had these incredible opportunities. But Joe's another guy. I mean, certainly more country than anything else, but elements of rockabilly and rock and punk all through Joe's music too. So that's where the best music resides. It doesn't always make it big because it just ends up being too weird for the mainstream, but sometimes it does. I mean, you look like at a band like our friends Counting Crows, who, incorporate all these elements into what they do, and they started off as our little opening band way back in the day, and then they became huge, and we ended up opening up for them in a tour through the UK just a couple of years later. But it's the adage about the elevator ride: be
you
nice on
know,
the way up and down, because if you're lucky enough, you will experience all of that.
yeah, well, I always appreciated like what you guys brought to the table in Cracker because there was this rich tapestry of heaviness, but also like, again, the songwriting that you do now, it was there too, but it's like it was just you really opened a lot of doors there with that stuff. So
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I take pride in the weirdness, and that, I mean, we were just as influenced by Led Zeppelin and, like, say, Uriah Heep as we were by The Clash, or Johnny Cash. And so we just sort of mix it all together and we just don't worry about it. And we agreed to do that from the start. At the same time, Lowry and I also said, um, let's not confine it. And over the years, there've been, I don't know, 60, 70 people in Cracker over the years. And we designed it that way. We sort of said, okay, we'll be the core. It would be like the Politburo, as David puts it. It's almost like, is Cracker a democracy? No, David said, it's more like a little tiny communist country.
you're like
You
a
know,
Soviet.
Here we are. It's like a Soviet democracy, more leaning toward, no, here's the leader, here's the ruler, here's the president and vice president, and they're going to be at the core. So anybody else coming in and that and or out of that orbit, which we're so thankful for. I mean, we've had the most incredible musicians in and out of our band over the years. We've worked with Joan Osborne. We worked with Charlie Quintana, who was with Los Plugs and played on some of the most seminal punk records of all time, and played with Bob Dylan. You know, we had Sal Maida in our band, who was from Roxy Music and played with all these other incredible people. So over the years, we've had this great opportunity. And it's almost like, well, who'd be great for this song? Who'd be great for this album? Who'd be great for this tour? Who's available for this tour? With David and I at the core, we sort of designed it that way. We always sort of knew that people would come and go. The current lineup of the band, with Carlton Owens on drums and Brian Howard on bass, they've been with us for a good long while. They've been with us longer than anybody has because they're just so damn good. It's kind of an Athens-based band. But we've also got Ann Harris, who's from Chicago, who is an incredible violinist, and
I
she's
saw some video of you working with her. That was phenomenal.
She's incredible. She's my baby sister now. Yeah, we've got such a musical connection that we finish each other's solo phrases. And it's just incredible to have her in the band. It's like being in a band with another great lead guitarist who just happens to play violin, you know? And she's incredible. She can certainly play all the country chops, but she does a lot of blues tours. So I call her, the queen of blues violin. And people are like, the what? I said, listen to her. She is. She's just a phenomenal player. So this incarnation of Cracker has a violinist front and center. David and I, as the band leaders and songwriters, are out on the sides of the stage, and in the middle we've got our rhythm section and Anne. And we get to a club and they want to start dialing in the sound, and like, wait, the two lead singers are out at the sides of the stage. We're like, yeah, we kind of do things weird in Cracker. You're just gonna have to deal with it. We just did a tour of Spain that way, where the Spanish front of house guys and the monitor guys were like, "Wow, okay, well, we see the stage plot now. Yeah, sorry we didn't look at it. Yeah, the singers are out here on the ends, and the rhythm section is center, and Anne on violin is center, and Dave and I are singing from the sides, and it works out very well. It's just our weird way of we just really don't do anything according to the book,
It's a cool
and
setup, though. I appreciate that. And it's cool that I think people don't realize like a band needs vision.
sure.
And then it doesn't matter how good the players are, if there's no vision grounding it, it's not gonna go anywhere. And you guys do a great job of doing that, just setting that tone and creating that foundation. But I love the idea of the violin player being in the center of it. That's really cool.
It works. It's not the usual, but it works for us. You know, um, we have two annual festivals, Camp Out and Camp In. Camp Out being in at Pappy and Harriet's, and I'm going to take credit here. David and I put that place on the map. It was just a little biker band in the middle of nowhere, and nobody there but bikers, basically back in the day. But it was also Pappy and Harriet's was also, Pioneer Town was sort of the epicenter for filmmaking back in the 40s and the 50s, um, and just this dusty little desert town. And after we made the first record, which did very well and eventually went gold, but for the second record, we decided let's go remote, and we looked at Frank Sinatra's old house in Palm Springs. We looked at Bugsy Siegel's place up in Lake Arrowhead. We wanted to go find a hideout,
Mhm.
sort of get away, from the record company and from away from all the distractions. And we settled on Pappy and Harriet's in Pioneer Town. There was a big empty barn there. So we said, well, we could do this. We can make it happen. And so Don Smith, our producer, said, "Yeah, let's." So we got a mobile truck and drove it into the barn, and that became our recording studio for Kerosene Head. Our biggest record was made in a barn, with a recording truck, set
That's
up.
I love stories like that because it's such a great album that it's like, and I would have never guessed that.
It did well for us. It went platinum, and I also feel very fortunate that our first record did respectively well. Eventually went gold, and it kind of got us on the map. It had a number one college radio song. Uh, it did pretty well. And then the second record's the one that blew up really big. Uh, and I think that's a better trajectory because if your first record blows up and it's huge, no matter what your second record sells, it's sort of seen as a failure or like a come down, which
Yeah.
is really unfair. But that's sort of the way the music industry works. It's all perception. And we were very fortunate that our second record blew up because it gave us some longevity. And here we are. We've done 10 albums. Um, and when we were making Berkeley to Bakersfield, our most recent Cracker record, I remember it did well with the fans and it got great reviews. And David sort of said, "Well, let's end on a high note. Okay, that's a good way to wrap it up." And we could both continue to do our solo records and other projects. And I produced bands, and I've produced a couple of great bands. Um, there's a band from San Diego called Swive, who I produced their debut album, and I'm very, very proud of that work. But we sort of said, okay, that's a nice canon of work for Cracker. Yeah, let's land on a high note. But recently, just I'll go ahead and be forthcoming with it. I've got a little nest of riffs and ideas and things, and I'm certainly going to make another solo record. But as far as Cracker making another record, I never say never. I say, I mean, uh, I don't know. I wouldn't surprise me if David, sometime in the next year or so, said, "All right, let's make one more," or not. We'll see. To people watching the interview here, we'll see. It's wide open. I never say never, but I think we certainly could if we put our minds to it. We've certainly, neither of us, if you look at our solo outputs, I've got sort of three and a half solo records, one being an EP called Dear John. The COVID year, when COVID happened, Cracker was on tour in Alaska when it was sort of a rumor at that point, well, there might be a pandemic. Sure enough, there is a pandemic. We had two shows that were sold out or nearly sold out at big venues up in Alaska, and people weren't coming. And then it came out that it's real. This is real.
Oh,
COVID was happening. And so Larry and I, we actually had tickets bought to fly to Hawaii right after that. We had to eat that. We ended up going home. There were non-refundable tickets and
no.
hotels and so forth. Well, I guess we're going home. So I went home, and that year I made a record called Blood Moon and an EP called Dear John, and I put them out both that year. It was a productive year for me, and I started doing these Friday night uh, Facebook Live shows, Friday Night Live from the cave, because I was living in the house that my ex-wife now owns. I was living in the basement at this time. We'd kind of broken up and stayed friendly and, you know, had a kid. So let's make it work. So I moved into the basement of the house, and every Friday night I would do uh, Johnny Hickman live from the cave, and I would go live, and I had themes. I did, Wheels was one of the themes, all songs about driving, and, which there are so many of. And I did a lot of my own songs, but I did cover songs. And then I had one show called Bring Me My Medicine, which was about drugs and, legal or illegal, hospitals and nurses and doctors. And I threw booze in there because it's a drug, and
Yeah.
so I did these themes, and it kept me going all through COVID. I just did these Friday night things, and I was free. It was on Facebook Live, and I said, "Well, if you want to throw me a tip, because Cracker's not working, no bands are working now. Here's the Venmo. Here's the PayPal, and darn if the crumbs, as they call themselves, the Cracker fans, didn't keep me alive keep me paying my bills through COVID. Thank you very much. I just we do another one in the next week or two. I think I'm thinking of maybe doing a Christmas one. I just go on there and I just go live and say, "Hey, here I am."
Nice.
It's fun.
Well, I look forward to the next Cracker album. It's funny when you were talking about bands having those hard-hitting first albums. It made me think of Warren Zevon,
Yeah,
Excitable Boy, which is
huge
just
fan.
a
Yeah,
hit machine. And then another one would be John Prine's first album. So I think both of those guys suffered from making first albums that were just so over the top.
yeah, successful, right? It can be a little bit of a curse. It really can.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm curious. Earlier on, before we got on the call, you were talking a little bit about some trouble you got into, and it made me think of the song "Not Enough" because it seems like that song is becoming more relevant every time I turn on the news. So
Yeah, I'm sort of the guy in the band that if it came down to it, I wasn't afraid to go to fisticuffs once or twice. I remember one night there was a guy who was really kind of egging David on. This was very early. I think it might have been before he made the first record or right around the time of the first record. I can tell this guy was trying to pick a fight with Lowry. And I'm kind of listening from the side and kind of looking over there. And at one point, I just went over and grabbed the guy's shirt. I said, "Look, back off or I'll back you off, motherfucker." And he started getting into it with me. And I put him to the floor. And everybody else in the bar, including David, was like, "What the hell was that?" And I said, he's gone now. Don't worry about it. So occasionally that would happen. I was the guy in the band who wasn't afraid to dust up if it came down to it. You can mess with me, but if you mess with one of my loved ones or one of my employees or a sibling or a dear friend, I will go toe to toe with you. And this happened. one year in Chicago. We were playing at the Metro, which is a huge venue in Chicago, and one of the security guys got into it with our guitar tech, who was 19 years old, big
Mm.
tough Atlanta street kid. But they got into it back there, and I went back and I grabbed the guy and I said, "Get off him, or I'll get you up," something to that effect. And the guy didn't, so I got involved. There were fisticuffs, and a guitar came out and was sort of used as a weapon. And
Oh shit.
and Larry's like, "Get out, no, 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 man." And anyway, I got into it, and it was just a big, ridiculous scrap. Um, but they reported, and I didn't even start the damn thing. I just somehow got sucked into it. But I walked off stage. Backstage, there was blood everywhere. It was just like, wow, that was quite a fight. I hope our guy did okay. Income, why it took seven cops, I don't know. Seven cops coming up the stairs, and they arrested me for assault and battery, took me to jail. I spent the night in Cook County Jail. Even though there were other fans saying, no, he didn't start it. He was trying to break it up. There was that kind of a mayhem and confusion and all this crap going on. So anyway, I spent the night at Cook County Jail. Not a great place to spend your first night in jail, but I did, and got out the next day. And we had a gig in Canada the next day. So I had to get out of, spent the whole night, didn't sleep, got out of jail. Our manager at the time, our tour manager, got me out of jail, hooked me up with a local lawyer who kind of had smoothed things over, got me on a plane, got me to Canada. I think we were opening for Soul Asylum, and I walked into the venue, missed sound check, walked out, put on a guitar, and opened the
Oh
show.
shit.
The Soul Asylum guy goes, "Hey, it's the Nutcracker." We were the whole thing. But it's funny now. Sure wasn't funny at the time. It took me a while of, going to court and so forth, and a little bit of a legal wrangle to get it all sort of down. Um, and every year I would go to Canada, it would come up because in the United States, they have different laws. There's assault and battery, which is a felony. And then there's simple battery, which is what they call a bar fight or a domestic dispute when nobody really got hurt, which is a misdemeanor. But in Canada, they have one, and it's just called assault. And
Mhm.
that's basically a felony. So you're coming in across their border, and they see that, even though it's the American version of it, was just a misdemeanor I was arrested for. They see that, like, wow, which one's Hickman? And I would get mustered out and taken into a side,
Oh,
interviewed about, well, okay, what happened in Chicago? Oh, here we go again. And it took a long time for me to sort of get that sort of off the record, but it's always going to be there, so whatever. If there's a fight now, I just sort of walk backward and like, oh, not me. It's your deal. Go ahead. So.
it sounds like I spent the night in Cook County Jail would be a great country song. So if you haven't written it already, I'm just putting it out there that I'd love to hear it.
Ooh. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, they were in the next cell over. It was funny. There were a couple of African American gentlemen in there for whatever reason, in the next cell over, and they thankfully gave me my own cell. I think they saw my purple Doc Martin boots, and I was wearing like a plaid crazy pair of pants, and you know, uh, I definitely stood out from the other arrestees. And there's these gentlemen in the next cell. What are you looking at, cracker? And I went, "Oh, you've heard of my band." I immediately started. Probably if they could have got a hold of me, I probably would have been against the wall. Loudmouth strikes again. So anyway, uh, yeah, we've got our Camp In festival coming up in March, and we're going to celebrate our Golden Age album. It's the 30th anniversary of the Golden Age, so that's going to be fun. At our Camp In festival, Camp Out always takes place in Joshua Tree at Pappy and Harriet's in Pioneer Town, and Camp In takes place at the 40 Watt Club in Athens, Georgia,
Oh, cool.
run by Peter Buck, who's a good friend of mine, his ex-wife, uh, and Valina Vigo. Uh, Barry Buck and Belina Vigo, they run the place and they're the talent buyers. And so once a year, they let us set up shop in there and do our camp in as opposed to camp out. And it's really, really fun. We've had some great Hackensaw boys, like all these great bands that have come through over the years. And this year, one of the nights, we're going to celebrate the golden age. We're going to play it front to back. And over the years, this has sort of become, we didn't even know it. I didn't know it was David's favorite record, but it's my favorite out of the 10 too. If I had to choose, I mean, I love all our records. I'm proud of all of them, but this one comes to the top as, and it didn't have a big hit. It was our third record, and it's a lot of fans' favorite, but it didn't have a big hit single or anything like the previous two had. And but over the years, it's become this big fan favorite, and it eventually went gold too, but it took a while. But yeah, we're going to celebrate the golden age this year at camp in. So yay!
That's super cool. I'm just curious, like with everything going on in the world right now, and we don't have to get into it because there's just too much to get into, but
I'll get into anything you want, Eric.
well, what's giving you hope today? What's keeping you going? And I know I read, Ginger's article that she did with you a while back, and you talked about having a gay brother and a trans sister, and
Yes.
and I'm queer, and I work with a lot of queer students, and it's like it's an intense time for people right now. It's a scary time, and
I mean,
I've got friends who've actually left the country already, and it's kind of heartbreaking.
I don't blame them. Yeah, going to touring in Europe and just seeing how the LGBTQI community is so much more accepted in these countries than it is here. Here, I mean, people use any excuse for their hatred and their
Yeah,
narrow-mindedness. And yeah, I was born with a gay brother, and my sister, who passed 2 years ago, Kara,
I'm
was actually
sorry.
born hermaphrodite. She was truly intersexed.
Mhm.
She was born internally female and externally male. Um, that's I know the true meaning of hermaphrodite. And the tragedy, and it's all going in my book, but tragically, the Air Force doctors decided that since she was externally male, they would remove all her female parts. She was
Oh
born
wow.
with a full uterus, and through puberty was growing breasts, no facial hair, and was basically becoming a woman. So they decided to, you know, go the opposite and make her male, sort of giving her uh, injections to, make her male basically. And so she did grow a beard, and they cut her breasts off, and yeah, and went inside and removed her uterus and her ovaries. She had these things, and they
Wow.
were taken from her, and she had to spend. I just really, it's kind of tough for me to talk about, but she spent the rest of her life undoing that. Um,
Wow.
and through electrolysis to get the whiskers removed, and all these things that had been done to her, when the opposite should have happened. They should have done surgeries to let her complete her female reality, which is what she was born with. And she's one in a million. Hermaphrodites are one of a million. But because of the household I grew up with, I mean, I grew up in a household as being the uh, the second oldest sibling, my sister being older than me, trans, and my younger brother who was gay. Out of six kids, I was sort of the big brother defending my gay little brother and my trans sister constantly everywhere we went. Um, bullies being bullies, as I'm sure you are well aware of. It was a constant. It was a constant. And then, as a teenager, I went through the glam era, and I'm wearing makeup and, my high heels and going through my Bowie era, and people just couldn't figure out this family. My gay brother, who was kind of would dress very kind of conservatively until he was in his early 20s, and he really came out, became very flamboyant, started working in the film industry and so on and so forth. But it wasn't until his early 20s that he really just became a very flamboyant gay man. And my sister, going through all the hell and high water and all the difficulties of being trans. Yeah, and now we live in an age where it's backlashing.
Yeah.
Just what I thought through the 80s and 90s, people are finally expanding their minds and their horizons to be loving and be accepting of our gay, lesbian, and trans brothers and sisters. And now it's backlashing the other way, and it just tears my heart to see people using their Christianity as an excuse. You know, I've got dear, dear friends, and my girlfriend. They're authentic Christians, as opposed to what I call HIPAA-Christians. I should have copyrighted that when I was a teenager because I came up with that term. These are HIPAA-Christians. They're not true Christians. Our
Yeah.
horrible being the perfect example of it now. Uh, a Christian who never goes to church, give me a break. I'm sorry. He's just not. We know he's not. The
Yeah.
far, far ignorant right does not know that he's not. They don't see him as the hypocrite Christian that he is, and that he's a homophobe. He's a racist. He's all these things I feel, and all the people that follow him, and he can disagree all he wants, but uh, just the nature of how he came out with the horrific murder of Rob Reiner and his wife. It just
Oh, that was heartbreaking.
comments on that. My jaw just drops. Is he
Yeah.
this? First, I thought it was fake. Did somebody else write this? No, it's obviously coming from him. He's not backing down. Um, we'll see. This is where we are, and my heart goes out to all my LGBTQI brothers and sisters because, yeah, I mean, you're in a time where the backlash is happening. You're not accepted as you were. You're not just the open arms aren't there for you as they were. They are by the millions and millions. So please don't forget that. But there's also the backlash. There's also the other side, hate disguised, behind a mask of, whatever your religion, you're this, you're that. Oh, my religion forbids this. Does it really? Have you actually read the Bible? Because I don't see it in there. I went to Catholic school, kindergarten through high school, and I know this book pretty damn well. It's not in there. Sorry, it's not in there. The
I
gay
think
not in there. The trans hate is not in there. And
I think the Megas Bibles don't come with the New Testament. I think that's part of the problem. I don't think they've read past the fire and brimstone, and because it's like don't seem to really know about that other guy. It's
I don't, what would Jesus do? He certainly wouldn't do what you're doing. If you walk through the Old Testament, uh, I could have five, six wives if I wanted. I could slay my brother if he planted the wrong crops. I mean, how literally do you want to take the Old Testament? Because it certainly doesn't fly with what the MAGAs are spouting at all, not even close. And yeah, these are difficult times. Um, so I will, there's an organization of I belong to a few loosely organizations of what we would refer to as straight allies,
Mhm.
and we're here to do what I've done since I was a kid, with a gay brother and a trans sister. I always had to fight. I was happy to fight. I took the black eyes, um, because that's just what you do with someone you love. And I'm proud to say that I feel a part of that community as a straight ally, and I always will. And I've raised both my sons that way, and they have open hearts and open minds. And I mean, I'm thankful for that because some of their peers growing up, they had to grow up with the haters too.
Yeah.
So, and it's all around them, and it's certainly around us. We have grown adults now, you know, uh, who, aiming their hatred at our gay brothers and sisters and our trans brothers and sisters. And I won't fucking stand for it. I'll fight tooth and nail. I'll do anything I can to protect and to love and to share that love. So there you have it.
Yeah,
That's
well,
my
I appreciate your activism and the work you've done, and I'm just hoping this is the last gasp of some of this hatred before these people burn themselves out because there's just nothing positive coming from it, and it's like there's just too many people who are trying too hard to live their lives in a good way, and it's the world could be a beautiful place if we actually work together on it. So
absolutely. And that goes through issues of gender, of sexual identity, race, all of it. Um, just I wish, well, we all wish that it could go just a little broader than that, and the acceptance could go a little broader. Hopefully, uh, I take a lot of hope in my younger son's generation because uh, they don't accept the hate. They don't.
yeah,
They uh, just across the board. people who are 21, 19, 21, 22, 23, they have a different reality. Uh, uh, Through the internet, they see and love and accept people that it would be pounded into their heads by their parents and whomever to rebel against, to hate, and they just sort of they're making up that generation is making up its own mind collectively, is that no, we don't accept this. We're not going to accept it. We're not going to live this. We're going to be open minded. We're going to love, and accept. So
And I'm actually seeing that, and a lot of my friends who are also educators, we're noticing like the younger people that are coming up,
mhm.
they're much more empathetic,
Yes.
they're much more compassionate,
See that as a
and
teacher.
it's I think it's giving me a lot of hope.
Mm.
So it's I do feel like they're here to wash away some of that other stuff. And then when they start to get into their own, I think they could make the world a much better place. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Um, it may take another 20, 30 years, maybe long beyond the time I'm on this earth, for it to really bloom and blossom into uh, the United States growing out of this nasty, hateful teenage years that it is. It's the United States, like it or not, is still kind of an adolescent. It's an
Yeah.
angry adolescent. And I am thankful to have been able to travel around the world and see that, wow, um, of course, there's hatred anywhere you could go, and there's conflict anywhere you go, and there's you know, racism and sexism anywhere you go, homophobia everywhere you go. But as a nation, there's more of it here than in these other places. And that's just tragic to me.
Yeah.
And when I go away and I come back, it's just compounded in my reality that we're kind of a back assward nation that way. And it's an embarrassment and it's a heartbreak that, and now we have a leader who uh, is welcoming it backward and spewing hatred and spewing these horrible values. And there's a thankfully shrinking percentage of the population who still believes that crap. But especially these last couple of days with the tragedy of Rob Reiner and his wife, and this guy's reaction to it. Even people I know on the right are saying, okay, enough's enough.
Yeah.
Basically, what has happened the last few days is that everything that Rob Reiner said about this guy is true. Here's proof. Here,
Yeah.
you know. So
Then you
what
compare the two. I mean, you got one person who's just grifted through life and taken and taken and taken, and then you've got another guy who, I mean, Rob Reiner's contribution to art, to culture, to liberty on so many levels was so vast. I
as a
mean,
director,
like so much of what he's done is like literally part of our lexicon.
absolutely, absolutely, and it's uh, I'm going to just sort of reach out to grab the positives of where we are, and his contributions are almost immeasurable in the arts um, from the get-go. Um, so, hopefully, if there's a silver lining to this, is that it'll bring things into focus and how we desperately need people like Rob Reiner in this nation, because they do. He was a person who, throughout his life, maintained a certain positivity, and there's just not enough of that even now. So, yeah, who knows where it's going to go? I remain positive. I'm not letting go. I'm gonna keep a smile. I'm gonna stay positive regardless of these horrific things that are going on now. With the shootings and this and then it's these things aren't going to go away. It's how we react to them that has
Yeah.
make an impact.
No, I'm hopeful. And again, it's the young people that are giving me a lot of hope right now. And so, hey, I you mentioned just like a little briefly there that you're writing a book. Did I catch that?
Did Yeah, I haven't really gone public with it yet because I want to save the steam up. But yeah, I've been keeping a journal for a long time and writing a book. a lot of it is based on my own very unique childhood and upbringing, being a military kid and with a gay and a trans uh, sibling, and what that meant to me. And so, kind of a unique situation. Um, and I didn't really see the value of that until a lot of time had passed. And so I'm going back through my journals and my writings. And so, yeah, I'm going to put out a book, and certainly it'll hold a lot of music. It's what I've done for a living for 40 years, and I've had the blessings and the great opportunities to, um, you know, be close to the Willie Nelsons and the John Does and dear friends of mine who, I'll be able to work next to and work with, and um, so yeah, I think a book's coming out of this. I'm gonna try to make it not too thick of a book, but it'll have a lot going on, and it'll certainly have some controversy.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I
thank
look
you.
forward to it. I look forward to it. You've got a lot, and you've got a lot to say, and you've lived a lot,
Thank you.
and you've got a good message. It's so. Hey, well, if people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to people to reach out? Is it, I mean, Instagram? Is it on the
Yeah, I got to
internet?
broaden my horizons as far as that goes. But yeah, you can message me on Facebook. Certainly, I go through and I don't go in there every single day, but I go through fairly often. I just recently started a Facebook public page because you're limited to your 5,000 on your personal page. And even in that 5,000, somebody will piss me off and I'll chuck them out and bring some more people in. It's just kind of how I do it. But I'm starting to think a little bit beyond that. I've got to get that going. And then there's a website in the works that is going to come out pretty soon. That some younger friend, much younger than I, are working up the website. The old Luddite, old fella, helped me get it going, and it's going to be a store where you can buy my music, shirts, and artwork. I'm starting to work on artwork too, and I'm going to start putting that up
Cool.
as a way to support myself. So yeah, there's going to be, uh, and I'll go big public with it once the website is up and running, and a Patreon and various other things I'm working on right now. But for now, you can message me on Facebook, and you can message me either on my public Johnny Hickman page or Johnny A. Hickman, which is my 5,000 uh, personal page. And I'll get back to you when I can. So
Nice.
thank you for that. Thank you for that mention.
Cool. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for this today. And it was so much fun talking with you about music, and I'm so excited to see where you go from here because I
Yeah.
have a feeling there's a lot more music that's coming at us. So,
And thank you to Ginger Coyote for bringing us together here to allow this to happen, and Punk Globe. And yeah, thank you, Eric. Thank you for your time and for your great interview. And I babble on, so you might have had some questions sort of tossed to the side. Thank you. You did a fantastic job, and
yeah,
please let me know how I can share our interview with fans. And
right
we'll
on.
have to
Thanks.
enjoy this one.
Maybe we can do a follow-up when the book comes out. How's that sound?
There you go. It's a deal. It's a
Cool. Cool.
fantastic.